Hello, my name is Alex, and for my movie, I chose to read The Kite Runner, which was a movie made in 2007 and is an adaptation of a book written by Khalid Hosseini with the same title. The book was published in 2003, and both the movie and the book follow the same narrative, with only a few small details being left out, insignificant. Most of my time, the book experience is also very enjoyable and can give a very good story as well and flush it out. And so I chose to read the book as well as the movie. Um, Both of them addressed a skew of the topics that were presented for us to talk about. However, I'd like to keep the plot of the story hidden so you guys can find out what happened for yourself. Instead, I want to talk about some of the real world aspects of some of the conflicts which were presented. This movie was not for the faint of heart and presents several controversial topics for the readers to digest. In fact, this in high school, some high schools do not allow this to be taught. So the narration follows the story of a young Pashtun boy named Amir, and it is told from his perspective. Thanks to this, the reader is limited on the information presented and has to view the world through Amir's eyes as his environment and circumstances change. A very important piece of information for you guys to know is the setting which it takes place, which is Kabul, Afghanistan, in the 1960s, which is right before the overthrow of the government and the Taliban coming in. And so right out the gates, the largest conflict in both the movie and the book is thrusted out for us to understand. While all other conflicts were resolved at the end, the ethnic tension has yet to be resolved to this date. The ethnic groups of the Pashtun have been prosecuting the minority Shiite, the Hazara, for over centuries. And so fast forwarding to the 1960s, the tension between the groups is beginning to escalate once again as a civil war is in the process of beginning. Again, this real-world conflict is currently ongoing, and it was directly stated for the readers to know when the local brass knuckle-wearing bully, that's pretty common around here, Asef, is stating his racist ideals about the Hazara. This is a teenager, and he's saying that Afghanistan belongs to the Pashtuns, the other ethnic group prosecuting the minority. And, it's clear this young teenager craves violence and is not afraid to act upon his words. Several times he quoted Hitler and how he praised him for the genocide he committed. And from here, the several conflicts begin to take root in the story. The most notable one is the connection between Amir and his friend Hassan, with Amir being the main character. Their connection is slowly beginning to be severed. There's a guilt that Amir feels for not helping Hassan. Well, you might ask, not helping him in what? Well, you see, after winning a kite tournament, Hassan goes to retrieve Amir's kite. It's falling out of the sky. He's running to go catch it. Well, somewhere along the way, the bully, Asef, the brass knuckle-wearing bully, chases him around and beats him up. But he doesn't stop there. He wants to send a message, not only to Hassan, but to Amir and to anyone who is essentially Hazar. And so he essentially he rapes him. And so the movie, due to legal reasons, is only implied, but the book does state this more, not in detail, nothing like that, but it does state this. And this is the reason why the book is banned in several schools. I'm very curious about your opinion on if this should be banned for that reasoning. I'd love to hear your guys' thoughts. And so, despite Hazan trying to resume life as it was previously, Amir is feeling very guilty. and he's just trying to withdraw away from Hazan. He saw this happen and did nothing to help. And so he even goes as far as to frame him into stealing his birthday present. And so, that's not something you do when you support someone who went through an event such as rape. And another tension in the beginning is Amir and his father's relationship. They have a hard time understanding one another, and Amir feels as if he's not living up to his father's expectations. I wouldn't call this age discrimination or a problem with the culture, but rather just a personal experience that the two of these people have to work through. However, this can be a very relatable topic for some of the readers, and it can help them attach themselves to Amir. They can attach themselves to the character. And throughout the entire story, this father-son relationship, this dichotomy, is present. At some point, it is revealed that Hazan had a child in the future who is named Sarab. And so Amir, who is at this point out of the country, returns back to Afghanistan 20 years later to find where Sarab. But when he returns, obviously the Civil War and the Taliban have moved in, and this country is a shadow of its former glory. Buildings destroyed, citizens carrying guns, walking around, living in a life of terror. It's horrible. And so, rolling back, Amir and his father were forced to escape, to leave from this country, and only to return years later to retrieve a lost family member. I don't think I'd ever be able to imagine myself in that situation, and what Amir had witnessed. I don't know what I'd do if I were in his shoes. Just watching the movie made me feel angry at the world for having the problems that he was raised with, but also for the other unfortunate people. These kids are raised learning how to shoot and kill is just an inhumane idea. When a child is raised in an atmosphere, it allows for the normalization of violence. It's a sad reality which angers me. It allowed me to appreciate the lifestyle I'm able to have even more. I'm sitting on this comfortable couch, and I want to do something, but I don't know how I can start or where to begin. And another conflict, which was addressing a real-world issue, were the orphanages. So upon Amir's arrival to Afghanistan 20 years later, obviously bombing raids and the Taliban have moved through, the owner of the orphanage stated how children were being dropped and they were roaming around like lost animals, and how they needed to be taken care of, but he did not have the capability to take care of all of them. And this is where they find where Sarab was being held, but they come to find out that he was traded off to the Taliban for another month of the orphanage being allowed to stay. And so this just presents a moral dilemma for the reader to think through. Is one child's livelihood, is that okay to be given away for another month of children's safety? A massive group of children's safety. Is one life acceptable for the group of many? In that time of month, a lot of children could be saved. They could be sent out of the country, but that one child, their life is ruined. And this normalization of violence, I use that a lot because it is an aspect of the real world which was addressed by this book and the movie. If I were walking around in modern Afghanistan, the most probable reaction I would have would be to run away from the conflict. Similar to Amir and his father escaping to America. That's probably what I would do. So I'd be in those shoes there. Another part which I hated near the end of the movie was when the Taliban pulled up in the middle of a soccer game and they had two people with bags on their head, and they were quoted as traitors of God and were put to death in the punishment in the middle of the soccer game. So instead of a halftime show, you have events such as this. They're ruling their people with terror. These kids, instead of listening to music in the middle of a football game or marching bands, They get to see events such as this. Again, the normalization of violence. It's an unhealthy aspect. They're putting down this other ethnic group. They're showing these kids wretched things, and especially in a brutal manner. And it evokes emotions of sadness and anger. I've never witnessed a person die before my eyes, but if I were present at that football game, at the soccer game, I don't think I'd keep my lunch down. And so the only time I felt annoyed was at the main character. He had a lack of loyalty to when his friend Hazan was raped. Even as a child, I was never bullied physically or mentally, and so I can't relate in that manner. But if I saw my friend or knew a friend or a person who was raped, especially in front of me, I would definitely try and help in any way possible to get them through this event they had. But I think the author, the creator, wanted the viewers to be angry. He wanted to educate us about this topic. Overall, I would rate this film a 5 out of 5. It addressed a massive list of problems in the modern world, and although the topics are controversial, such as rape and child molestation, as a mature adult, I find the coverage of these topics to be brilliant. Actually, this scene is the most prominent example of the lessons I learned from this movie, which is don't be a bystander. When a person you know has been raped, and don't be a bystander and let them suffer in silence. When a country is suffering, don't be a bystander and supply weapons in hopes that the war silences itself. Send in support and stand by the fellow people of this planet. It should also come, this movie helped me to stop being a bystander in the problems in the real world and take action. It kind of going on a side rant. It should come to no surprise that the Peoria area has a long history of segregation. Currently, it was ranked 7th as the worst city for Black Americans to live in all of America. It's an improvement from the 2015 second worst in all of America for the Black Americans to live in. And as a person who was raised in this area since childhood, I feel like I encourage everybody to take a stand against, events, not against just segregation. Support your local artists. You can recycle more, simple things like this. You help with charities, rather than sitting at home watching televisions. When summer swings by and school's put on hold for me, I will be doing these things, and I encourage you guys to as well. Don't be a bystander in your daily lives, and instead of standing still, take a step. Go pick up some trash at your local park or anything like that. You can have fun while doing it too. And so I also recommend that you guys read. I'm only partway through this, but this is a pretty good book, so I recommend you take a gander into it. It's pretty good.